We're going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sean Dugan. I'm the Assistant Town Administrator here in Easton. I want to thank you all for coming out to celebrate this very special occasion. And as we celebrate the successful completion of the construction of the PFAS treatment facility behind us and down the way, and there's a third one out there as well. I'm relatively new to town, so I wasn't here for most of the design or the construction, but I have to say it's been truly impressive to hear what has poured into this project, the people that have really dedicated a lot of time and energy into making this possible. So I'm excited to see this in its final form here. And with that, I would like to introduce someone who is very important to this project, our town administrator, Connor Reed.
Thanks, Sean. Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. It's been a long road since the fall of 2019 when Director Field walked into my office and asked me, "What do you know about PFAS?" As a liberal arts major, the answer was nothing. What's PFAS? And it's been quite a journey. We're excited to celebrate how far we've come. More than 4 years ago, at these wells, as part of routine well maintenance, the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection suggested to Easton DPW that they run a new type of test looking for PFAS in our water supply. Easton had been, at that time, for many decades, recognized for its excellent water quality by the Mass DEP. And we had tested for PFAS before and come up with non-detects. And so, of course, we were happy to try this new approach. However, this new type of testing was on a scale 1,000 times more precise than what we had done in the past. It was on a part per trillion scale. And so we were all quite surprised when we got test results back showing that there was PFAS present in some of our drinking water at about 30 parts per trillion. Easton is not home to an airfield or a training facility or a factory manufacturing these synthetic chemicals, and yet here they were. Now, environmental justice and chemicals experts have long known of the looming contamination threat posed by these forever chemicals, named as such due to their propensity to bioaccumulate in the food chain and eventually in all of us. But this was, and frankly still is, an evolving, emerging area of water regulation and of public works. At that time, there was no drinking water standard for PFAS. Easton's levels were below the United States Environmental Protection Agency's health advisory standard, but above what the DEP in Massachusetts thought that it may eventually regulate. And so, because those regulations didn't exist, we had no framework, we had no kind of model to look to what do we do with this information that we have now. And so we decided that if it was important enough that if DEP wanted to regulate it in the future, that we needed to inform the public, and that's exactly what we did. So we asked DEP to come to a televised meeting with the select board, disclose the test results with the public, talk about what PFAS are, why they're a problem, and work with us to lay out a roadmap to get us to where we are today. They did so, and we appreciate their partnership. At that time, Easton launched an at-home filter rebate program and eventually a free water filtration system at the water division for concerned residents as a down payment to the public while we got to work designing and building the plants that you see here today. Our residents were very engaged right from that very first meeting and benefited greatly from working with our citizens together every step of the way. So above all else today, I want to recognize their leadership in stepping up for the funding to meet the emerging contaminant on the cutting edge of its regulation, well in advance of most water supplies around the country. Easton's aggressiveness of getting straight to work before any mandate actually existed, forcing us to, has enabled us to deliver these plants sooner and at a substantially lower cost than many of our peers will now face. I just heard from environmental partners, colleagues of ours in another part of the state are facing $75 to $100 million costs for PFAS treatment. That spirit to meet the moment and work together is what got us here today. And we're joined by an Easton resident I want to recognize and thank, who I think embodies that spirit. That's Dr. Kyla Bennett. She's here with us today, formerly of the United States EPA, and now the Director of Science Policy for Public Employees for Environmental Responsibility. Kyla formerly served on the Conservation Commission here in Easton and is someone that we were able to rely on right out of the gate as we grapple with the emerging contaminant and designing a solution for it. So thank you for your work and for your partnership, Kyla. in a perfect world, the companies that produce these chemicals and have for decades known of their negative health effects would be the ones paying for all the costs to remove them from our public waters. That isn't what tends to happen, and so I'd also like to thank and recognize the Select Board in Easton, and particularly Chair Fulgenetti, for their leadership and being one of the first in Massachusetts to join the ongoing multi-district litigation to sue the manufacturers of these chemicals. Since then, thousands of water districts, fire departments, firefighters, and individuals have also begun to sue, as has the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Tackling big challenges like these take a team-based approach across government, and I'd also like to thank and recognize Congressman Stephen Lynch, who is here today, and former State Representative Claire Cronin for their collaborative efforts to secure $2 million in Federal American Rescue Plan Act funds towards this project. Despite the progress that we've made to get here, there's still more work to do. Today, it's still largely legal to manufacture, produce, and sell these chemicals throughout the country. And they're present in an astonishing array of consumer and industrial goods, from makeup to clothing, furniture to firefighter protective gear. And so while we should celebrate this important achievement to protect our drinking water, we also need to recognize that we're simply treating one endpoint of the problem, and that mitigation of PFAS will take a comprehensive approach to address production, contamination, and mitigation of these forever chemicals. That's exactly what the recommendation of the Massachusetts PFAS Interagency Task Force was, which I was fortunate enough to be able to serve on. And I thank Senator Sear and Representative Hogan for filing legislation co-sponsored by Easton Senator Timilty and Representative Doherty, which would establish in Massachusetts a PFAS remediation fund, codify important consumer notification standards, and ultimately ban the sale of many of these chemicals to finally turn the tap off at the source. Easton's been very lucky to have supported residents and elected leadership who paved the way for these projects. But ultimately, you need a team who can design, build, and operate the thing. Easton was ready to meet that challenge thanks to the exceptional public works team that we have in town. Director Field leads an extraordinary department, and this project exemplifies the Easton Water Division's excellence, which I trust will soon be recognized by DEP once again. I'd be remiss not to specifically recognize and thank Water Operations Manager Rich Tierney, who joined Easton in 2020 and has worked tirelessly for literal years straight, without fanfare, without spotlight, to take us from those first part per trillion tests, those first new round of tests, to the successful construction of these 3 water treatment plants. So as I turn it over, I would like to ask everyone just to share a round of applause for Dave, Rich, as well as the engineering, GIS, water treatment, and construction professionals of all of Easton DPW who always step up and make it happen.
Thank you, and good afternoon. It's nice to see so many people here to celebrate some of Easton's newest infrastructure. Public works infrastructure is, especially water, sewer, and drain, is often out of sight, out of mind, at least until there's a problem. And this building is a response to one of those problems. You might be wondering what you're exactly looking at. Behind me is a treatment building for well number 2. We have 2 more identical setups like this, just down the driveway for well 4 and across off Gary Lane for well number 1. And while these buildings may not be architecturally pleasing or interesting like some of Easton's more notable buildings, they are important nonetheless. Each building looks this way because it's housing 2 40,000-pound filters that are capable of holding 40,000 pounds of treatment media to filter out that PFAS. The buildings themselves are 28 feet tall. So the vessel is 28 feet tall and the buildings are 34 feet tall. So they're pretty large, and I encourage everyone, if you haven't already, to step inside after this, get a feel for the scope and scale of the buildings. How the process works is that water is taken from our well buildings. So in this case, well 2 down there, it's piped to this building, where it's then filtered through an ion exchange resin to remove that PFAS down to non-detect levels. And then it's piped back to that same building through another water line, where it then gets corrosion control and disinfection and out to our system. As with most projects of this size and scale, there are many challenges that have to be met. Some of the challenges we anticipated were basically long lead times for the vessels, the electrical equipment and components, emergency generators. But we also ran into trouble with the media that was selected initially. We had granular activated carbon, which, while it removed PFAS, caused some water quality issues. So we had to pivot and put in a ion exchange resin, which delayed us a little bit. But I'm happy to say all these were done and up and running by December of 2023. Facilities like this don't build themselves. It takes a collaborative project approach, and we had a great cooperation between DPW, the Water Division, our consultant, Environmental Partners, our applications engineer, Woodard and Current, our vessel supplier, Calagon Corporation, and our contractor, West Construction. I truly appreciate everyone's assistance in getting this project done. And in closing, I want to especially thank my team, including Rich Tierney, Water Operations Manager, Josh Ford, a Water System Inspector, a Supervisor, sorry, Jeff Clunan, Water Treatment Plant Operator, Greg Swan, Deputy Director of Public Works, and Civil Engineer Matt Groschel. So thank you all, and I will turn it over to Select Board Chair, Dottie Fulgenetti.
Thank you. I'm going to invite the congressman to come up and speak before me, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you for that generous introduction. Look, I know that people often take for granted that that federal funding and state funding and local funding and the representatives at each level of government work together, but it is far less common than we would hope. And first of all, I want to give great credit to Connor Reed for his leadership in making this happen and pulling all of us together at the federal level, at the state level, and at the local level. And I want to give great credit to my colleague now who is the ambassador to Ireland, Claire Cronin, who came to us when ARPA was initially passed. So the American Rescue Plan Act was very, very different than the usual funding mechanisms that the federal government disperses. In ARPA, we had a national confrontation with the pandemic that was affecting each and every state, each and every community in the country. And yet there were some communities that, from the Southwest that were dealing with a far different set of circumstances, deeply rural, and compared to situations in the Northeast. So as a result, the way the legislation worked was we gave, rather than try to take the time in Congress and figure out what each area needs, we just said, we're going to leave it up to the local governments and the state governments to figure out what their priorities are. And that's how this worked. So when Claire Cronin came to us and said, we have a looming crisis that was soon to become a national crisis on PFAS across the nation, she was really the one that, working closely with town leadership, identified the need and the consequences that would develop if we didn't get in front of this problem. And it dealt with something that was essential to good health here in Easton, the quality of the drinking water. So with our ability to get just a couple of $1 million on the federal side, but I know that this was a lot more than $2 million, and there were other sources of revenue locally and state funding that also played a part in this. It was a team approach that really, I think, got this project done at the very end. We continue to have that relationship. This crisis and the way it was responded to, and I want to give great credit to the local DPW team. Normally, of a town this size, you would not have the talent to deal with a problem of this magnitude or the newness of this problem, which sort of developed. This was a case of first impression for a lot of communities. And it's remarkable that you had the personnel here on site, within the DPW team and the consultants and construction firms that could deal with this in such a fast and efficient manner. So I give great credit to that. And the relationship that developed between the federal, the state, and local officials during this facing the PFAS problem here in Easton, I think has led to other possibilities and potentialities. Namely, we're working right now, Connor and I had a conversation the other day about federal funding for the DPW facility and public safety facility. I know we had, I was there at town meeting for several hours during the debate on that issue. So we were able to get in the most recent round of funding from the federal government, $200,000 to put towards the new police, fire, and DPW facility here in Easton, as well as, and we're also looking at ways that we might be able to direct federal funding toward the new firehouse over on Stone Hills campus. Well, was their campus, and I believe they've given the land to the town now. So a good example of how collaboration between federal, state, and local government can work together for the betterment of the people that we all represent. So it's an honor for me to represent the town of Easton in the United States Congress, and it's an honor to work with our partners here at the local level, the Board of Selectmen, Connor, our state delegation as well, and the state Senate, and the House of Representatives. We're very lucky to have such committed public servants that represent the town at the local and state level. So thank you very, very much.
So I'll be brief. I just want to talk to you about this from the select board's perspective. This was not on our bingo card, treat toxic water in our community. Easton had long had a really great reputation for our water, so it was quite a surprise to us, as Connor spoke about. And we get asked by reporters and others, why did Easton move so quickly when other communities didn't? And we were trying to figure this out. We didn't know, should we wait till the regulations come out? How fast do we move? There weren't even the materials available to build this yet when we first started talking about it. So we like to be cutting edge, not particularly on challenges like this, but I'm very proud of how everybody stepped up. We do have an amazing team in our DPW with Connor's leadership, but the select board, we knew that this had to be something that we acted on quickly. We all live in Easton, and we have people in the community like Dr. Bennett that really made us scared about what this really means if it goes untreated. We used it as an opportunity to try to educate people in the community on how to stop using things that have PFAS that will get into the water. Realistically, we know it's everywhere, and we can't control that on our own. But I know that people I'm friends with were buying new pots and pans, or certainly thinking about it when they were buying consumer products. So I can't say enough about the team for getting this done. As we all heard, it's cost so much more money now to the places that are just starting this. And without everybody working together, including the community, to fund this, we wouldn't be here to celebrate this today. So thank you everyone for coming. If you want to get a tour, we'd be happy to show you around, and please enjoy some refreshments. Thank you.
Three, two, one.
All right, so we're standing inside of Well 2, the PFAS treatment plant for Well 2. So this building houses two very large filter vessels. They're 28 feet tall, and they each house 40,000 pounds of filter media. The media inside this is ion exchange resin, which is basically just a giant filter, and the water comes up from the wells, goes in the top of the tanks, wakes its way down through the filter media, comes out the bottom of the tank, and then it goes back up to the other vessel and does the same process before it's returned to our well building, where it gets corrosion control and disinfection before going out to the system. So this is a very large facility. The building itself is 34 feet high, and it's just to really house and protect these from the weather and the elements. But in this particular building, there's about 1,100 gallons per minute that goes through the system, and we have a similar setup for well 4 and for well 1.